culture of quality assurance. Quality assurance is often thought of as just a single step in the software development lifecycle, somewhere between developers creating the feature and deploying that feature to production. But quality assurance doesn't just happen at one point in time, and it's more than your testing tools or your bug count. Quality assurance is a mindset, and it's a culture that your whole team and the entire company should accept and be involved in. Having a culture of quality assurance benefits everyone. It improves the quality of work that's being produced, and it also improves team cohesiveness and overall morale. But what does a culture of quality assurance actually look like, and how do you create it? When you start creating your culture of quality assurance, you'll have some challenges, and that's okay. It's definitely worth the effort. When I was working to create this culture shift at my company, two of the biggest challenges I faced were onboarding and change management. In these examples about how I tackle these challenges, I'll focus on my engineering team rather than the whole company. And that's because your engineering teams are the core of this. Shifting to a culture of quality assurance needs to be supported and gain momentum from the bottom up in order to succeed. So the first challenge is change is hard. Change is also really emotional. You're introducing new processes, new workflows, and new tools, a new way of looking at the work, and maybe even a totally new way of working. Being able to implement thoughtful and empathetic change management is one of the biggest blockers to creating this culture of quality assurance. Personally, my biggest challenge with change management is patience. I always want to start implementing change and iterating process as soon as I know it's needed. And I have to remember that my timeline is not everyone's timeline, and my thought process is not everyone's thought process. So what does thoughtful change management look like? People like to know what's coming so they can prepare for it. Allow transition periods so your team can adjust. Most of our process and tool changes started out on a single project with a period of feedback before getting a wider rollout. It's like writing an essay. Tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you told them. I never handed over the changes and called it done. I worked with my team the whole way through. I also never made changes top-down. I explained my reasoning, explained the problems that I thought needed solving, and always offered the why. It's important to have open conversations with your team about solutions. Make sure they know that their expertise and their opinion are valued and important to the process of creating this new culture. As you're offering choices and making decisions, communicating with your team is essential to moving this culture shift forward. People like being kept in the loop, and well-informed people make better decisions. When your team is a consistent part of the conversation, they'll be more invested in the decisions being made. That means they'll be an active part of the culture shift, which increases the likelihood of success. Empathy plays a major role here. You need to understand how your team will have to adjust their habits or their skill sets. Think ahead about potential blockers or trouble areas. Be patient and be open to feedback and iteration if something isn't working out. I highly suggest reading Laura Hogan's blog post on desk moves for a deeper dive into handling change management. As anyone who started a new job can attest to, onboarding is one of the hardest things to execute well. It includes making sure people know what they need to know, when they need to know it, knowing who to ask when they have a question, and knowing where the information is stored. When you're introducing your team to new workflows or tools, you also have to balance the time and effort this onboarding takes with their current responsibilities. So as much as you can, make it easy for them. When you reduce the churn that goes along with messy onboarding, it's much easier for everyone to focus on the actual changes. For developers, a makefile is a great way to do this. I use makefiles to create simpler commands for setting up and running new tools. Documentation is also key. I've always liked creating test-specific READMEs in the test folders and linking out to it from the main project README. Redundancy is also helpful. Include relevant parts of tool documentation in your READMEs so your team has easy access to the information in one place. By lowering the barrier of use with efficient onboarding, my team was much quicker to adopt new tools and processes into their existing workflow. It's also helpful to practice I do, we do, you do when you introduce a new tool. Do an introductory demo for them, and then run through some examples together before you hand it over. Make sure your team has what they need to understand and use their tools effectively. So what does this culture of quality assurance actually look like, and who's responsible for it? The answer is everyone. A culture of quality assurance is not limited to a single team or department. In order to be truly effective, everyone needs to support and contribute to it. At the top level, buy-in from management is key. A culture of quality assurance is not created top-down, but it's important for them to support the work that's being done. Management can influence the conversations, and it gives you a certain authority and credibility to the rest of the company. Not to mention, it's nice to have budget approval for changes as you go along. If you have a sales team, include them in this culture shift. Work with your sales team to create collateral on the process and benefits of quality. This can be used for responding to RFPs, added to contracts, and even included on your company's website. The sales team is in a position to seed the ground early for conversations about quality. If your company does discoveries or architecture phases, this is also a great place to add your culture of quality assurance. Architects can start thinking about high-level testing needs and collaborate with a tester or QA engineer to research tools and outline test plans. They can also make recommendations for project architecture that allows for easier testing. Product managers also play a part in creating this culture. They're in a great position for advocating to stakeholders about the benefits of including a certain level of testing throughout the project. In other words, your product managers are telling stakeholders why it's worth paying for. If stakeholders don't hear about the importance of quality until the project has already started, they'll feel like paying for it means sacrificing their MVP. Developers contribute to a culture of quality assurance in a few ways. When it comes to building the product, I know that test-driven development is not always possible. Timelines may be short, and maybe there's a lot of legacy code. But TDD can always be encouraged by developers and leads, and it's helpful to set department-wide goals for code coverage. Code reviews are also a place where developers contribute to this culture. When other developers review the work, it allows more people to be familiar with what's being built, and it encourages better communication. It takes practice to give and receive useful code reviews, and I would recommend Vaidehi Joshi's Better Code Reviews and Angie Jones's 10 Commandments of Code Reviews as resources for building that skill. When developers work together to uphold standards of quality, they're acknowledging and supporting the shared responsibility for this culture of quality assurance. When we started creating this culture shift at my company, we found that it was helpful to have a specific testing step in the development workflow. When developers are immersed in a project, it's easy to take on a lower level view. Having a tester or QA engineer do acceptance and exploratory testing offers the chance for a higher level view of things, seeing the whole forest instead of just a few trees. Having a dedicated QA engineer also means there's someone to focus on other opportunities for ensuring quality, integration or end-to-end testing, increasing automation, and setting standards around deploys and releases. Ultimately, a culture of quality assurance can be all these and more. These examples are not the only way for a culture of quality assurance to exist. No single tool, test, or person guarantees quality, so a good culture of quality assurance is flexible with the ability to meet changing requirements. So we've talked about what the culture of quality assurance looks like and some of the challenges that you may have to solve when you implement it. But why have a culture of quality assurance at all? As you're having these discussions on what quality looks like for your team and for your company, make sure to include the benefits of this culture in your conversations. At the core, having a culture of quality assurance increases quality and increases confidence in the work you produce. When you have this foundation, when you have a culture and a mindset of quality baked into every step, you're creating a way for people to collaborate across teams and departments with everybody working toward the same goal. And that is a culture of quality assurance that enhances your ability to build and launch high-quality products that meet your stakeholder needs from start to finish. Thank you.